Ooh, home run. The devil act rotating to home.
Hi, folks. If you give us just a minute or two, we still have folks coming into the meeting.
Make sure that everybody's on mute if you can. Thank
Yep.
you.
Agony of defeat. Okay, folks. Okay, for this clinic, what we're asking you to do is if you could please keep yourself on mute. We have a lot of folks, I think over 45 at this point. And if anybody does want to talk to me live, I would be happy at the end after we turned off the recording to talk with anybody who wants to stay on with this. So this clinic is being recorded, and like all District 4 clinics, it is going to be available at the umpires page on District 4 website. So we're having a little bit of technical difficulties tonight. So I will be having to admit people into the waiting room. So may look like I'm a little distracted, but it'll work out fine. Okay. So what this clinic is about, it's a basic rules clinic for umpires, managers, coaches, staff, and players. You'll see sometimes where it's very basic rules, but also we get a little advanced at times. The focus is on minors and majors. And what we want to do for baseball and what we want to do is acquaint you with the rule book. We're going to cover safety issues and introduce any new rules. And we have a couple this year. So we are running these clinics in 3 75-minute sessions. They'll be roughly about 60 minutes of instruction and about 15 minutes of question. Obviously, this one's for February 17th, but we also have 2 more set up. They'll be at the exact same time, 7 to 8:15 on February 24th and also on March 3rd. And you can see that we're covering different rules with this. So if you're interested in teenage baseball or softball, we're running 2 separate rules clinics for that. In many respects, what these 3 clinics, the basic rules clinics, do is give you the basic understanding that's relevant for if you're going to be working with teenage baseball, also with softball. And then those 2 clinics go in more in depth for those particular divisions. So what we're going to do is go through the rule book tonight. We're going to start with new rules. We're going to talk about some regulations, just highlight a few of them, not go through all of them. And we're also going to focus on rules 1 and 2. What we do is we highlight these rules with short video clips, and periodically we will answer your questions. So inserted into this presentation are slides that read questions. And at that point, I'll ask those questions. So what I would like you to do is to type your questions into the chat function and direct them to Don Waddell. And when we get to those question periods, Don will be the one who asks me those questions. Okay, let's start off. So we're going to be going through the rule book. Obviously, not all rules. We can really just sort of skim the surface in many respects. But you should acquaint yourself with the rule book. You can still get hard copies of it from Little League. They're going to sell out very quickly, probably. But you can also get it as an app on your phone. And I would highly recommend that you get the rule books as an app. They update every year automatically. You only pay for them once. So in that rule book, there are regulations. A lot of that stuff really doesn't concern us here. It's how you form leagues and different things like that. But it also contains some important information such as mandatory play, pitching rules, and also decorum. We're going to put the pitching rules aside for today, and we will bring those up at the last rules session. So then the actual rule book is divided into 9 parts. And as you can see, tonight we're going to try to look at objectives of the game and also definition of terms. Now, those are the playing rules, but there's also something that we call local rules. And each league sets its own local rules. The Little League rule book gives leagues various options. And these options can be something like, are you going to use the 15-run rule or the 10-run rule or both, or not use either of them? So there's a series of rules that Little League allows a league to decide, or somebody who's administering an interleague program to decide those. So local rules cannot contradict the Little League rule book. In other words, if your league wanted to suddenly change the pitching distance, that's not a local option. And to be able to do that, your league would have to vote on that. They would send that to the district administrator, who would forward it to Western Region. Western Region would then forward that to headquarters, and headquarters would decide whether they would want to grant that waiver or not. Now, there's another type of rule, and that's ground rules. And ground rules covers the rules that govern a particular field of play. Ground rules must be decided on by local leagues prior to any games being played on those fields. They should ideally be posted on a league's website so that you can know what the ground rules are. And ground rules decide things like where a dead ball area is located. What do you do if a fly ball hits a wire, telephone wire that's crossing over left field line? Or what do you do if there's an overhanging tree and a fly ball hits that tree? Those are ground rules. And those should be written up for every single Little League field there is. So let's start with the new playing rules for 2022. And really, there's only 2 that we need to worry about. One is mandatory play, and the other has to do with pitching. So this is something that hasn't changed as part of mandatory play. This is the same, but we need to go through this before we can talk about the change to mandatory play. So one of the great things about Little League is that any player who shows up at the start of the game is guaranteed to have one at bat and play a minimum of 6 defensive outs. Leagues can designate more mandatory play. I know a number of leagues will mandate that players have to play 9 defensive outs in the field. If a team has rostered 15 to 20 players and at least 15 of those players show up on the day of the game, a league is allowed to reduce that to 3 defensive outs instead of 6 defensive outs. Know that in interleague, all levels of interleague, softball, baseball, that rule is in effect if a team has 15 or more players and 15 or more show up at a game. Otherwise, 1 at bat, 6 defensive outs. Now, there's no exception for this, including for shortened games. So what do we mean by this? What we mean by this is if you have a 15-run rule game, if you have a 10-run rule game, if you have a time limit game, if you have a game called because of rain, called because of darkness, it doesn't matter. All players are supposed to get mandatory play. So what's the penalty if a player does not get mandatory play? Well, they start the next game that they show up at. So if a player only bats once, doesn't get his or her 6 defensive outs, the very next game, that player will start. That player will meet the mandatory requirements for the previous game, which was 6 defensive outs. They will then remain in the game and then meet mandatory play for that game, and only then can that player be pulled. Now, there are penalties on managers who don't allow their players to meet mandatory play. There's not going to be a penalty for a 15-run rule game, for a game called for darkness. This is a coach that in a game that goes the full, say, majors, 6 innings, doesn't get their players in. A league may impose penalties on that manager. What is this about? We want kids to play. Okay, here is the change to mandatory play for this year. And it's adding to the definition of what it means to bat at least 1 time. So, to bat at least 1 time, a player assumes the position of a batter with no count, and one of the following occurs. What that means is they have to step into the batter's box and not have a count. So if improper batter was batting and suddenly mid at bat they switched, that player would be stepping in with a count already, so they wouldn't be able to meet mandatory play. So a player steps in with no count, and then one of the following happens. They're retired as a batter. Say they strike out, or they hit a ground ball and are thrown out at first, or they become a runner and then in trying to steal second, they're thrown out, or they score a run, or the inning or the game ends because a 3rd out is made by somebody else. So what that means is once a player steps in that batter's box, they're going to get there at bat. And if they get on base, it means they're going to run the bases at least the first time to meet this mandatory play. Remember, you only have to meet mandatory play 1 at bat once in the game. So there's an approved ruling that while at bat, if the 3rd out of the half inning is recorded by putting out another base runner, that batter must return as the batter in the next half inning. Now, this may seem like something we've always done, but actually there's been an interpretation in the past that if a batter was batting and the 3rd out was made, they had met mandatory play, and that batter did not have to come back up to bat. The batting spot had to, but not that batter. Now it's saying if third out is made when you're batting to meet mandatory play, you definitely have to come back and bat the next inning. Okay. So what also this rule has is that to meet this requirement of mandatory play, it must be done the first time the player is in the offensive position comes to bat. So again, the ruling before was that as long as you did this at some point during the game, it was all right. Now it's saying no. If you come up to bat, you need to complete that at bat. And if you get on base, you need to run the bases. In other words, what's this all about? It's Little League saying, listen, what is playing baseball? Playing baseball is playing defense, it's batting, and if you get on base, it's running the base. And again, this is only for the purposes of mandatory play. Okay, here is the other rule change for 2022. I don't know if you remember last year, there were a ton of rule changes. This year, we only have a couple. This has to do with threshold exemption. We will talk in the third rule clinic about what the threshold is and the various pitch limits. But basically, Little League has rules that if you're a certain age, you can only pitch so many pitches. And if you pitch so many pitches, you need a certain amount of rest. And this is all spelled out. There's also a rule that if you go from pitcher to catcher, you can only pitch so many pitches. And if you pitch more, you can't go to catch. Well, what happens if you meet one of those, what we call thresholds, while you're in the middle of pitching to a batter? Little League allows us to keep that pitcher in the game, to continue pitching to that player, that batter, and still not be considered to have gone over the limit. In other words, they met the threshold, they've gone over, but we go back, we revert back to where they first started facing that batter. So this is the change for this year. Nothing's changed with 1, 2, and 3. That if you're hit your limit as a pitcher and you're still pitching to a batter, you can continue pitching to that batter until the batter reaches base, until the batter is put out, or the third out is made to complete the half inning or the game. Number 4 is what's been added. What a lot of people didn't really notice before was that if a player started to pitch to a batter and met the threshold, they had to complete pitching to that batter. They could not be pulled before that at-bat ended for that player. So what this is now saying is, listen, you can pull the pitcher while they're still facing a batter and still get your threshold exemption. The other change with threshold, and this was just a clarification, it's when does a threshold take hold? It's basically saying that it's the first pitch to a batter. So in other words, that we have a rule that says if you pitch 20 pitches or less, you don't need a day of rest to pitch again. If you pitch 21 pitches or more, you do have a day of rest, but we allow the threshold. So what this is saying, how do we determine when that threshold is? It's the first pitch to the batter. So if the first pitch to a batter is number 20, I'm safe. I can continue pitching to that batter. It's just sort of a clarification. The rule was written a little unclear before. Okay, that's it for new rules. So now let's talk about a few regulations that are important for us as umpires, coaches, managers. So prior to and during the game, only managers, coaches, players, and umpires are allowed on the field. So there can't be brothers and sisters. There can't be parents. Also, there can only be 3 adults per team allowed, even during the warm-ups. So if a team has a manager and 3 coaches, know that only 2 of those coaches are going to be allowed out on the field. If you have minor and T-ball, you are allowed 4 adults out on the field instead of just 3 adults. For umpires, I would say this to you: when you show up to a game and you look out on that field and you see too many adults, go to the manager, introduce yourself, and mention this rule and ask him to remove one of the adults if there are too many adults. No coach or manager may warm up a pitcher. In other words, no coach or manager may get in the squat position and start warming up a pitcher. It's all right to play catch with players. That's fine. But a coach or a manager is not going to play the position of catcher, whether it's in between innings or before the game when pitchers are warming up. Why do we have this rule? It's a kid's game. Teach some other kids how to catch. Let them catch. They're the ones participating in this game, not us as adults. During the game, there are no bat boys, no bat girls. Players must remain in the dugout unless they're out on the field playing or they're in the bullpen warming up. So make sure that those players stay in the dugout. An adult coach or manager should be in the dugout at all times. So for you as umpires, if you by chance look over at the dugout and you see that the 2 base coaches are out and there's no adult in that dugout, call timeout and don't allow the game to continue until an adult is in that dugout. No one else is allowed in the dugout. No brothers, sisters, no friends, no parents coming in there. The one exception I'll do is if a player is injured, I will allow a parent in there to check on their child. The first sentence in Rule 1 of Little League says that Little League baseball in all divisions is a game. So that's something we always have to remind ourselves of. It's a game. It's a game for kids, played by kids. So let's keep it this way. This is a sign at Pleasanton Little League, and I think it would be a great sign to be at all league facilities. I'm a kid. It's just a game. My coach is a volunteer. The officials are human. I assure you I'm human. No college scholarships will be handed out today. I think in this day and age, as civility is something that's come under strain, I think as we as Little Leaguers can sort of rededicate ourselves to this, that it is just a game. Okay, one of the rules and objectives of the game is that there are no handling of bats in the dugout. Bat should be in one place. A player should not touch that bat until they are picking it up to leave the dugout to go at bat. Why do we care about this? This is a major league game. So if you think about it, those are adults who have a much better sense of what's going on around them than kids. Major league dugout is far larger than any kind of dugout that we will have in Little League. And even under those conditions, somebody handling a bat can still hurt somebody. So please don't allow players to handle bats in the dugout. On-deck batters in the majors and minor, there are no on-deck batters. Between each half inning, 1 batter is allowed out, but only 1 batter. There are no metal cleats that are allowed in minors and majors. There are no casts, including soft casts, allowed on the field. This holds for umpires, coaches, and players. If I break my arm, I'm not going to be out there umpiring. You can be in the dugout. That's perfectly fine. Can't go out on the field. No jewelry is allowed. The one exception is a medical alert bracelet or medical alert necklace, but we don't allow even the rubber bands around the arms, no rope necklaces, no earrings or nose rings are allowed. You cannot tape over them. There are two options. If a player has an earring, they either remove the earring or they sit on the bench and they don't play in the game. Those are the only two ways. As umpires, we are obligated to check equipment before the game. We need to help assure the safety of those players and also to make sure that everybody is using legal equipment. So we start with batting helmets. Batting helmets can have a cage, not have a cage. If they have a cage, we are always going to be checking to make sure all the screws are there and are in tight. It must have the Noxay standard insignia on it. We also look for cracks. And I don't know if you can see my cursor, but right here is where a lot of cracks occur on batting helmets, older batting helmets. And we also make sure that all the padding is inside here. If this were torn away, we should remove the helmet. It's a danger. In baseball, a lot of what we call C-flaps or chin guards are starting to show up. What are the rules about that? No new holes can be drilled in a helmet to put on one of these face guards. And also the manufacturer of that flap must match the manufacturer of the helmet. So you can see that here we have a Rawlings helmet and a Rawlings face guard. Here we can see we have a helmet with a face guard that does not match the manufacturer. You can even see there should have been another hole here, but there isn't on the helmet. These should always be removed from the game. Also with batting helmets, no shiny chrome helmets, no repainted helmets, and no excessive stickers. How do you judge the number of stickers you can have? Well, Little League generally says no more than 20% of the helmet. Those stickers cannot cover up any kind of Noxay insignia. And I'll tell you that of both those helmets, I'm not an engineer. I can't tell you what 20% is. When stickers get that plentiful or that large, I'm going to tend to toss the helmet. Catcher's gear. It's always a question of when does a catcher need to wear all their gear? When do they wear part of their gear? Anytime a catcher is taking infield or outfield practice and they are near a bat, that coach has a bat hitting to the outfield, that the catcher must wear a helmet with a dangling throat guard. If a catcher is warming up a pitcher in the squat position, catcher's helmet, dangling throat guard, athletic supporter and protective cup for males, and they must use a catcher's mitt. During the game, what do they need? They need the helmet and dangling throat guard, they need the protective cup, they need a catcher's mitt, and now they also need the chest protector, long or short, and shin guards. These are the two types of helmets that Little League uses. Even with the hockey style helmet that extends down, you must have a dangling throat guard. And when we say a dangling throat guard, it means that it dangles. So generally what we say is from the bottom of the helmet to the top of the dangling throat guard, you should be able to stick 2 fingers in there so that the throat guard can dangle. The catcher's helmet, like other helmets, has to meet Noxay requirements, also needs to have proper cushioning, and we will check to make sure all screws are in and tight. You cannot use skull caps at any level of Little League. Why do we care about the catcher's gear, that they have a helmet on when they're catching somebody? Here we have a catcher who is not wearing a helmet, catcher's helmet. And I don't play the audio for these, but if you heard the audio, you would hear kind of a sickening crack. So always make sure those catchers have those helmets on. Okay, Don, we've gone through a good bit of stuff. Do we have any questions?
We do, Jim. We have 2 questions. So let's take, since we were just talking about Noxay, do you want to answer what Noxay is, or do you want an engineer to answer that?
I would love for an engineer to answer it, but I don't know. Do we have an engineer? Is there an engineer in the room?
Yeah, I can answer that question. So Noxay is it's National Organizing Committee for Sports Equipment. Now, I don't know what the A exactly is, but so what it is, it's a group of the manufacturers of sports equipment have got together and agreed on what things need to be engineered appropriately for safety. It's all safety driven, and there's standards for baseball equipment, standards for softball, lacrosse, football, other things. So that's what Noxay is. So all the major baseball and softball equipment manufacturers are members. And then they've hired a company that does the testing of the equipment. So Jim showed the Noxay logo. You'll see on newer equipment, slightly different, that shows which testing lab actually approved that equipment. So if you have any more questions about Noxay, go Google them and you'll find out all kinds of good stuff. Okay. Jim, here's a question. I'm going to generalize this a little bit. So whose responsibility is it, let's say when we haven't talked about pitching limits yet, but a pitcher meets their limits, or we have some other improper substitution situation, or with an ineligible player or whatever. Whose responsibility in the game is it to handle that action? The umpire?
Ultimately, it is the responsibility of the manager. We all, as adults, try to help out. So to take that example of the, say a 12-year-old can only pitch 85 pitches. How do we keep that pitcher from going far beyond that? And because it's an issue of safety. Ultimately, the responsibility is with the manager, but we all look out for it. So scorekeepers should alert the umpire as that limit comes near. And I will keep track of that too. In between innings, I'm keeping track of the pitch count. But ultimately, it's the manager. But when we get to that point, I will always ask the scorekeeper, please tell me when they're reaching their limit. And usually they'll tell me within about 5 pitches before they reach their limit. Then I start kicking in and I'm going to make sure that that is met. But if we don't, as an umpire or scorekeeper, notice that, it is ultimately the manager's responsibility.
Okay. So, got one more, Jim. You talked about there always has to be one adult in the dugout and coaches stay in the coach's box. Whose responsibility is to get the bat from the batter who left it near the batter's box or on the sideline once they, when they finish their at bat, to get it back to the hitting team dugout?
Ideally, and the way it should work, is that a player with a helmet on, and it has to have a helmet on, will come out and retrieve that bat. What we don't want to have happening is a coach having to run back and forth and sort of delaying the game. And we never want that coach in the dugout to come out to retrieve that bat. So always have a player with their helmet on. Gives the kids something to do.
Okay, a couple more have come in. One has to do, and I'll just answer this, right? So we talked about the Rulebook app at the beginning. If you go to the App Store, search for Little League Rulebook, whether Android or on your iPhone or iPad, and you'll find the appropriate app to download. Yep. Can we differentiate minors and majors? So minors are specific division definition in Little League that are made up of players that are 12-year-old and younger, and each league might call them something different. Majors is a specific definition, again, of Little League.
And just know, for the rules that I'm going through today, if I don't specifically say it, the rules are for both majors and minors.
Okay, so here's one. My team doesn't have enough adults. So can a parent come out of the stands and be a base coach? A parent helper. So let's assume that question is someone who's gone through the background check process and is approved volunteer as a parent team helper.
Well, that's what we're assuming, that parent has gone through all of that. You know what, as an umpire, I'm not going to be checking that. But, you know, talk to your league about getting more volunteers, and talk to your parents about getting more volunteers. And listen, sometimes you may end up with just 2 adults. And when that happens, one will stay in the dugout, one can go out on the bases, and the other base coach will be a player with a helmet on.
Okay, so that's one of our questions is, can players be base coaches?
Yes, they can. And we'll get to that.
Okay. So Jim, unfortunately, we still have one more question, and it goes back to the rule modification regarding the definition of at bat, or definition of, I guess it's the pitching threshold change, where we added removed prior to the completion of the at bat.
Mm-hmm.
Can you clarify that? Because the person who asked the question is saying, hey, wasn't that already covered last year by the first pitch of the at bat?
Yeah, so without that rule, or without that addition this year, there was more or less, it was an implication. And the implication was that if you started pitching to a batter and you reached your threshold, you had to keep pitching to that batter until that batter was put out, batter got on base, or the third out of the half inning occurred, or the third out that ended the game. There was no exception that you could stop pitching to that batter once you've started them and reached the threshold. So I think a lot of people thought that was there, but it actually never was. The rule before was, once you started pitching to that batter, you had to continue pitching to that batter. You could not be removed from the mound while that batter was still at bat by your coach. You could, but you would lose the threshold protection. So that's the way the rule used to read. I think a lot of people didn't really understand that that's what it was, but it was. So now they've added this to allow a coach or manager, or allow a manager to pull the player before they complete pitching, that before that batter is, as I said, the other three conditions are met.
So I guess my answer is, yeah, we were all probably doing it one way, and now Little League has recognized that, and so now the rule is in alignment with what folks generally we're doing anyway.
Absolutely.
Okay,
We move on.
move on.
Okie dokie. Bats, always fun. So in all divisions of baseball, we have a definition of a damaged bat. A damaged bat is a bat that's cracked, it's bent, it's dented, it has sharp edges. A defective bat is not an illegal bat. It's just a defective bat, and it's dangerous. So what we always want to do is remove that bat. If a player comes to bat with a damaged bat, we simply remove the bat. There are no penalties for it. Why do we care about damaged bats? I want you to watch, you'll see it actually 3 times. I want you to watch around the head area of the umpire. I think he's a little shell-shocked right here. So maybe not, we could have found that bat, but if it was damaged, maybe we could have taken that out of a game before it became a sharp piece of shrapnel that headed straight back to that umpire's head. So those are defective bats. We just simply remove a defective bat, but there's also something that we call an illegal bat. And an illegal bat is a bat that's altered, say the inside of it's been shaved out. It doesn't meet the length or diameter requirements. It's too long for the division, for example. It doesn't have the proper logo, or it has an unreadable logo if it's a non-wood bat. All BPF marked bats are illegal in Little League Baseball. Maybe 4 years ago, 5 years ago, BPF was the only kind of bat that was allowed. Now all BPF bats are illegal in Little League. Also, a bat with pine tar or an adhesive substance at all levels, from T-ball all the way through seniors, that is an illegal bat. So what happens if a player steps into the batter's box and they have an illegal bat? Well, if the illegal bat is discovered before the next batter enters into the batter's box, that's the window of the appeal. If that batter steps in the batter's box with an illegal bat, it's discovered before that next batter enters, the batter is out. If there was a play that occurred at that at bat, the defensive manager may either accept the out or accept the penalty and accept the penalty or decline the penalty. So think of it this way. Somebody with an illegal bat comes in, hits a home run. As a manager, you're going to want that person declared out and the run erased. If, however, that player steps in the box and hits into a double play, you don't want the penalty. You want to keep the double play. But irrespective of that manager's option, these following things will always occur. The first violation of an illegal bat, you will lose an adult base coach position. And the emphasis is on position. You don't lose a coach. You don't remove them from the game. They just simply go into the dugout. That means that you're now going to have a kid with a helmet at that position. If there's a second violation in the game of any player of an illegal bat, the manager is ejected. And every subsequent violation, the new manager will be ejected. So what's important, always remove the illegal bat. Little League is saying it's illegal, it's not safe, so make sure it is removed. What about our mandatory play? You step into the batter's box and the umpire says time, looks at your bat and says, that's an illegal bat, you're out. You've met the mandatory at bat for mandatory play. You stepped in the batter's box with no count and you were declared out. So majors and minors, what makes a legal bat? It has to be a diameter of 2 5/8 or smaller. Its length must be 33 inches or shorter. Are wood bats okay? Absolutely. If you have a non-wood bat, if you have a wood bat, you don't need any kind of logo. But if you have a non-wood bat, it must have the USA Bat logo on it. Any kind of BPF bat or BB Core bat is illegal in minors and majors, Little League Baseball. So these are the insignias at the top that you'll look for. You'll see somewhere where it says USA Baseball. If it has BPF, as you can see where that X is, it's illegal. If it has the BB Core insignia, it is also illegal. And you'll find that logo at that position in the bat between the handle and the barrel. For all divisions of baseball, no traditional batting donuts are allowed. In other words, that light blue batting donut, that is illegal. It needs to be removed if it shows up. You can use a batting sleeve. You also can't use Prince Fielder's batting donuts there. And that, quite frankly, is just a horrible waste of good donuts. Okay, we've gone through Rule 1. Now we're going to be heading into Rule 2. Rule 2 is really the heart of the rule book, and I would advise all of you, if you only have a limited amount of time to look at your rule book, go through Rule 2. If you understand the definitions, and that's what Rule 2 is, are definitions, you will then be able to understand and apply the other rules in the rule book. But you got to know those definitions first. So we're not going to go through all of them, but we're going to go through some of the more important ones. So fair territory. So a playing field consists of fair territory and foul territory. Anything outside of that is dead ball area. So what is fair territory? On or above, and that'll become important in a little bit, on or above the playing field, within and including the foul lines. The foul lines are in fair territory. All the bases, including home plate, are in fair territory. So that's one of those myths of baseball, that if a baseball hits home plate or stops and is settled on home plate, that it's a foul ball. Entire home plate is in fair territory. It is fair. And fair territory extends all the way out to the base of the outfield fence. So if that's fair territory, what's foul territory? Well, on or above the playing field, outside the foul lines, that blue area, that is foul territory. We have one more area, and it's a very important area, and it's called the dead ball area. And this is the area beyond any physical boundary that delineates where that playing field ends. It might be a fence. It might be an imaginary line from a fence and that fence line extended. It might be a chalk line. It will be the dugouts, bleachers, and stands, some kind of boundary which says this is dead ball area. You can't play baseball in this area. We used to have, a number of years ago, something called catch and play, catch and play. And boy, I'm even forgetting the terms now because I'm so used to using dead ball area. We used to have out of play area, so that if you caught a ball and stepped into an out of play area, you could come back in and continue play. But what happens now is that dead ball area, all you have to do is step any part of your foot on that dead ball area, and it will be automatic time. A ball that gets lodged in a fence, in a backstop, or in the catcher's or umpire's equipment, that also is a dead ball area. So these are dead ball areas. This is a ball that's stuck in the fence. We have Benji there. He claims there was no pine tar involved in that ball getting stuck to his chest protector. We have an umpire down there. The ball actually ended up stuck in his pocket, and the outfield fence where a ball got lodged. Those are all considered dead ball areas. Okay, the strike zone. So a little league strike zone is, the way it's written in the rule books, is that it extends from the armpits to the top of the knees and over home plate. And for the strike zone, we also include that it's the batter's natural stance. It isn't some kind of exaggerating stance where they try to squat down. And it's with the batter's usual stance when swinging at a pitch. That is the strike zone. So if a pitched ball that doesn't hit the dirt first goes through that red area, any part of the ball over home plate, any part of the ball between the top of the knees and the armpits, any ball that passes through that, that is within the strike zone. So here we have a home plate. Here we have two balls on either side. A fraction of the ball is touching over home plate. These would both be strikes. Know that the black beveled area is not actually considered part of home plate. Now, are you going to call a strike zone that's that exact, that that ball has to cross over that plate? We all develop our own strike zones, and hopefully we are consistent with our strike zones. As we have the lower levels of play, minors, we are going to extend out that strike zone. As we move up to majors, we're going to bring it in, and as we go up to other areas. But what we want to do, we want to encourage players to swing and try to hit the ball, and we don't want to discourage pitchers from never wanting to pitch because they can't exactly put that ball over that home plate. Batter's normal stance. Is this a normal stance? This was actually at the Little League World Series. And that's how you discourage that. You call strikes. What was interesting is if you watch that batter's other at-bats, he's in a regular batting stance. So that was not his natural stance. So you're not going to judge that as his strike zone. Okay, so what's a strike? A strike is a pitch that crosses through the strike zone and is not hit, or is not struck at. In other words, a called strike. One that's struck at and missed, swing and a miss. That's fouled with less than 2 strikes. A foul tip, and we will talk about a foul tip in a minute. Offering at a bunt, and we'll talk about what offering at a bunt is in a minute. Or bunting a ball foul when there are 2 strikes. That's also considered a strike. Or the pitch touches the batter as that batter is swinging. Now, I want to emphasize here, the hands are not part of the bat. So that's another myth of baseball. So if a player is swinging and the ball hits their hand first and they're swinging at that pitch, that is a strike. They don't get their base on balls. So think of it this way. When you put down the bat, where are your hands? Your hands are on your body. They don't stay with the bat. The hands are not part of the bat. Anytime a player is hit by a ball in that batter's box pitch, we are going to immediately call time. If the pitch touches a batter in flight in the strike zone, again, it hit the batter, we're going to call time, but we're going to call a strike. Why? Because that player, say, was crowding the plate and their hands were over the strike zone and the ball was passing through the strike zone, that will be considered a strike. So I want you to watch this. Is that pitch at a strike height? Yes, it's between the knees and the armpits. It hit him. So you can see that. Now watch this. Is it over the plate? Look where that catcher's mitt is. That ball was going to hit the inside corner. So this was a ball that there should be time, and then it should have been called a strike because the batter was in the strike zone. Here we have that example. The hands are not part of the bat, and if a player is swinging, it's going to be a strike, a painful strike. So that hit his hand first. He swung, time, that's a strike. Okay, if those are strikes, what are balls? A ball is a pitch that does not enter the strike zone, not struck at. A pitch that bounces first and then may bounce through the strike zone, it is not a strike unless the batter swings at it. And there are certain illegal pitches and illegal actions by pitchers that can be called a ball. So a foul tip. What's a foul tip? This is a ball that's struck at and player makes contact with the bat and that ball goes sharp and direct. So it can't go up at an arc. It goes sharp and direct, first touches the catcher's hand or glove, mitt, and is then legally caught. That is a foul tip. If it happens on the third strike, it is a strike. It is a live ball, which is why it's so important to distinguish a foul ball from a foul tip. With a foul tip, the ball is live and runners can advance at their own risk. It doesn't stop play. So here's an example. Ball is struck, goes sharp and direct, first touches the catcher's mitt, and then is caught. We see that umpire coming out, making sure, and that's the signal that we as umpires give for a foul tip. This is not a foul tip. Sharp and direct, but it does not go first to the hand or glove. It first hit the player's body. This is a foul ball. What's a bunt? A bunt is a batted ball, not swung at, but is intentionally met. And that word intentional is important, and is tapped slowly. So in Little League Baseball, if you square to bunt and you hold the bat out in front of the strike zone and you don't move it and the pitch comes in, you have not offered at that strike. So the umpire, if he believes the ball was in the strike zone, will call a strike. But say the ball was at the player's head, he or she will call a ball. It's not an attempt. In softball, the requirement of Little League is you have to bring the bat back or it's considered offering. Little League Baseball, if you stand there, hold the bat out, don't move it, you are not offering at the pitch. And in T-ball, there are no bunts permitted. Okay, fair and foul balls. So a fair ball is a ball that settles on fair territory before first or third. In other words, it comes to rest, it dies, it's on fair territory, and it's before first or third. So anytime a ball is hit and it's going into foul territory, don't immediately call foul. Wait to see what that ball does. A lot of times it can spin back into fair territory, die, and it is a fair ball. A fair ball is also a ball that bounds, that is a grounder, on or over fair territory past first or third base. That also makes a ball a fair ball. Or a line drive or fly ball that first lands in fair territory beyond first and third. Once it touches beyond first and third in fair territory, it doesn't matter what happens to that ball then. It doesn't matter if it rolls into foul territory. Once it touches in fair territory, it is a fair ball. Or a ball that touches first or third base, automatically, it's a fair ball. That touches a person on or over fair territory. So this is where you really need to be careful. If somebody's catching a fly ball, where did they touch that ball? Was it touched over fair territory? Was it touched over foul territory? It will decide whether it's fair or foul. A ball that passes out of the playing field in flight over fair territory, that, folks, is a home run. So if that's a fair ball, what's a foul ball? Really just the opposite. A ball that settles in foul territory before first or third. A ball that bounds past first or third, but bounds past over or on foul territory. A ball that first lands on foul territory past first or third base. And a ball that touches a person or foreign object, and in foul territory, a bat that's been dropped is considered a foreign object that touches a person or foreign object on or over foul territory. That makes it a foul ball. So what matters is not where the player is positioned. If they're in foul or fair territory, where was the ball touched? This is the first base line. This ball was first touched over fair territory. It is a fair ball. Here, it doesn't matter. The player is completely in fair territory. Where was that ball first touched? Over foul territory. That is a foul ball. So, especially for newer umpires, don't rush to call a foul ball. So these are all going to be fair balls. Where was it touched? Before first or third in fair territory. Doesn't matter that it rolled down foul territory. Right there, it becomes a fair ball touched before first or third on fair territory. What makes this a fair ball? It touches third base. This ball touched first base. It is a fair ball. Touched third base. Fair ball. Bounding on or over first base in fair territory. Doesn't matter that it hit first in foul territory. Right there. Is it going over fair territory? Yes. Same here. Bounds over the bag. And here, a ball hit past first or third base, first touches in fair territory. Remember, the foul line is fair territory. So when it hits that foul line, that is a fair ball. Doesn't matter what happens to the ball after that, that is a fair ball. It matters greatly on fair balls, whether they are on fly balls, whether they are touched over foul or fair territory. If this player makes this catch It doesn't matter if it was caught over fair or foul territory, the batter's going to be out. But what if the player doesn't actually catch the ball? Where was it touched? Look at that umpire on the first base line, belt buckle on line, is going to make sure that's either a foul or a fair ball. These are some of the hardest calls to make. Player running towards the line. Is it fair or foul? Right now, this is where it gets determined. If he caught it, no big deal. But guess what? He drops it. So it makes all the difference in the world. Was that a foul ball or was that a fair ball? In this case, it was judged a fair ball. Okay, Don, do we have any questions?
Jim, we do. So let me get the chat back here. The bunting rule. Can a league implement a rule that says, hey, if they don't, in baseball, if they don't pull back and just square, that's a strike?
They can, if they go through that waiver process and pass it as a board, pass it on to Ted Boet, the district administrator, have him send it down to Western Region and have Western Region send it to Little League headquarters. If Little League headquarters agrees to that, then yes. Otherwise, no.
Okay, so the general answer is no.
Yes.
But, okay, here's one. What about a batter hits the ball down on home plate? Is that a dead ball, a strike, a hit? What is it?
So a batter swings, the ball goes straight down, hits home plate. It's nothing at this point. What will matter is, does that ball settle in fair or foul territory before first or third? Or is that ball touched by a player in fair or foul territory? So that will determine whether that's fair or foul. But at this point, the ball hit down, we don't have anything.
Okay, we've got one more. You mentioned that hands are not part of the bat. But I have this bat that came out of a game last season, and the manager contended that the bat was purchased with these hands already attached so that they should be part of the bat. No, anyway, so no, it's just a little prop we have, but no hands. These did not come on the bat. Okay. That's all we've got, Jim.
Okay. So let's talk about a catch. The catch is an act of a fielder, a ball in flight. It can be either hit or thrown. And you must demonstrate secure possession, complete control. Those are very key phrases that we use. Secure possession, complete control. It must be in the hand or in the glove. It can't be under your armpit, for example. And there needs to be voluntary and intentional release. What that means is the player must voluntarily and intentionally try to get that ball out of the glove. If the ball drops on the transfer, that is, as that player is taking the ball out and it drops, we still have a catch. And as umpires, we make a signal like Gator, and we say on the transfer, transfer, that's a catch. It's not a catch if simultaneously or immediately the player collides with a fence, another player, the ground, and the ball comes out. That is not a catch. So here we have a ball hit to the outfield. It survives the hit to the fence, but not the hit to the ground. So despite the fact he has control of it here, remember, immediately he falls to the ground and the ball comes out. That is not a catch. Similarly, we need to show voluntary release. Great catch, almost. So the player was trying to show he had possession of it, but what he should have done is put his hand up there and started to pull the ball out of the glove. So you could say secure possession, but then no transfer. And actually, he really didn't have secure control over that ball. Here we have a catch, but we have a drop on the transfer. So this still is considered a catch. So he's pulling the ball out, and then he drops the ball. Umpires will have disagreements on what's voluntary release. And I would say that I would disagree here with the call that was made. So we'll see three views of it. It's the first baseman. Looks like he dropped it. Like he didn't have control, but there he looks like he has control and he's reaching in with his hand to pull it out. A little bit less clear angle. That was judged not a catch. However, if you look at the replay, you can see on the top two, this player definitely had secure possession and control of that ball. On the bottom two, you can see that he's actually reaching his hand into the glove to remove the ball, and he just bobbles it. So one can argue that that is a catch and a drop on the transfer. This is not a catch yet. If he pulls that ball out with his hand, then we will have a catch. Okay, infield fly, always fun. And we do enforce the infield fly both in minors and majors. We want to teach players the rules of baseball and how to play baseball. So what's an infield fly? The infield fly situation is when we have less than 2 outs and we have runners at first and second, or the bases are loaded. Anytime we have any of those configurations, less than 2 outs, first and second, bases loaded, we have the possibility for an infield fly. The batter then has to hit a fly ball. It cannot be a bunt, and it cannot be a line drive. It must be a fly ball to a player that's stationed in the infield. So we can't have an infield fly that goes straight out to the right fielder. And here's a very important part of the rule. It has to be a ball that can be caught with ordinary effort. In other words, the player doesn't have to run 30 feet to get to the ball. They don't have to backpedal backwards and reach out to catch the ball and fall down. That's not ordinary effort. Ordinary effort is also established by division. It isn't established by who's the best player on the team, who's the worst player. What is the average player in that division? And if an average player can catch the fly ball with ordinary effort, then we have an infield fly. Sun cannot be factored into this, but the wind, very blustery day, that can be factored in as to what is ordinary effort. So we have all those situations met. What then do we have? The batter is out, whether the ball is caught or not. So you'll see umpires point skyward and say, infield fly, batter is out. Whether that ball is caught or not, that batter is out. What that does and why this is important is it removes the force. Now that those players on first and second, they can stay there. If they want to advance, they advance at their own risk, but they can stay on their base. They're not being forced. The ball is live. If the fly ball is caught, the runners must tag to advance. So you think chaos ensues with a little league infield fly. It also happens in the major leagues. So what's amazing about this play is not only the offense and the defense, but also the officiating crew will screw this up. So we have runners at first and second, one out. We have an infield fly. Ball's touched before first and third. You see the umpire at third calling infield fly. So the batter is out. There is no force. Those runners do not have to run. We do not have a force. They don't realize that. The umpire didn't realize there wasn't a force. So that was just chaos. So everybody messed up. The defensive players believed they had force outs. They didn't. The offensive players believed they had to run. They didn't. And the umpire at second base believed there was a force out at second. There wasn't. Ordinary effort. This is a college game in Anchorage, Alaska, and it's going to play twice. I want you to watch the first baseman the first time, and the second time, watch the second baseman. What I would argue is this is not ordinary effort. So watch the first baseman. When you have to run and catch a ball over your head, no. If you're a second baseman and you have to cover that much ground and you still can't make the catch, that's not going to be ordinary effort. So be lenient with the little guys, little gals. Okay, a tag. So there's two kinds of tags. One is tagging a base. It's what we always do at first base. The ground ball's hit and throw to first base. First baseman tags the base. It can be done with the body, glove, or ball, really any part of that player. And the player must be holding the ball in either the hand or the glove. There's another kind of tag, and that is touching a runner with the ball or with the hand or glove that holds the ball. So you can't hold the ball in one hand and tag with the glove in the other hand. Ball must be in the glove and tag, or take the ball and tag with that hand. One must maintain control of the ball. With a tag, we do not require voluntary release. It's not the same as a catch. A tag is different, but you must maintain control throughout the process of that tag. When is it not a tag? The ball is dislodged by action of the fielder in touching the runner, or the ball is not in the hand or glove before it touches a runner. And I know we're running out of time, so I'm just going to finish out tag here. So this is a tag of a base. And remember, as long as that player has control of the ball, and he does in his hand, he can tag the base with his glove. The umpire called safe. It was actually put under review, and then the runner was declared out. Here you must maintain control. So on the tag, that dislodges the ball. And I want to commend this umpire here who watches the play all the way through before he makes his signal. Now, I want you to watch the pitcher on this one. Does he maintain control throughout the tag of the base? The umpire says yes, but that ball slips out. This is the best view of it. And guess what happens? we go to replay, and it's overturned. So you must maintain control of that ball throughout the play. Okay, Don, that's going to stop it for now.
So, Jim, we've got an infield fly question.
Sure.
Give you the scenario. So, let me make sure I get this exactly the way the question was. What happens if there's a fly ball hit and it happens to be in the outfield, but it's catchable by an infielder? Is that an infield fly?
It can be an infield fly if the umpire believes that with ordinary effort, that infielder can catch that ball, even though it is actually in the outfield. That can be an infield fly.
So what defines the infield versus the outfield?
It really is kind of imaginary because different fields are different. Some fields you have grass right behind the bases. If you play softball at Hidden Lakes in Martinez, the upper field, there is a long stretch of dirt past second base before you even get to the grass. So I wouldn't get hung up on what's infield and what's outfield. What matters is, can that infielder make that catch with ordinary effort? That's all that matters.
Okay, so can an infield fly ruling be appealed?
Can an infield fly ruling be appealed? If the umpires, for example, didn't call an infield fly and it was, 1 out, runners at first and second, clearly a ball that was a fly ball, second baseman was camped under it the entire time, the umpires don't call it, the manager has a right to come out and ask the umpires, wasn't that a foul ball or wasn't that an infield fly? At that point, the umpires can get together and discuss that. They may decide, oh, we really blew that. We forgot there was an infield fly. They can retroactively call an infield fly. It's ugly and you don't want to do it, but you need to establish some kind of equity because those fielders acted in a certain way because they believed there was an infield fly. The runners did the same thing. So you're going to have to place runners and outs in the best, your best judgment. So you can do it retroactively, but if the manager comes out and says, hey, wasn't that an infield fly? And the umpires say, no, we don't believe that that met the requirement of a fly ball, or it didn't meet the requirement of ordinary effort, that's a judgment by the umpire, and that cannot be appealed.
Okay, that's all we got, Jim.
Okay. Folks, thank you very much. I'd love to see you all back next Thursday at 7 o'clock, and we will continue going on with rules. And if anybody wants to remain on and ask me any particular questions, that would be perfectly fine. Trying to, there we go.